The Trump White House is continuing to be in a state of chaos over the release of millions of Epstein files. And one of the most, just as a quick side thought before diving into the meat of this segment, one of the most bizarre reactions I've seen online, as if a memo went out, is prominent right-wing accounts saying, now that all of the millions of Epstein files have been released, it's time for liberals to apologize because Trump has been vindicated. Just hold for a second. I don't know what world they're living in, but for example, you know that cat turd, which sounds like a joke account? It's actually like a serious MAGA influencer somehow. But this is the world we're in. We have people getting aroused in their Teslas having sexual conversations, and we have cat turd who's like invited to the White House or something. So he posted, the release of over 3 million documents pertaining to Epstein has proven two things. And thing one was Trump is totally innocent. To which I responded with this headline, woman told FBI Trump abused her at 13, Epstein Files reveal. How does that, you might go, but that's a false allegation. But how do all of those allegations against him in the files at all confirm that he's innocent in your mind? And then number two, the point from this MAG account was, an almost Democrat politician or celebrity, I'm sure they meant to say almost every Democrat politician or celebrity who have screamed loudest about Trump is knee deep in the Jeffrey Epstein satanic pedo cult. So this has been a reoccurring post from a lot of MAGA accounts is, see, Trump's innocent. That's what's revealed. And it's only Democrats. When like, yeah, there's people of all different political ideologies in there, but Trump's name is how many thousands of times? Thousands of times. I know that for sure. You actually have this breaking proof that the DOJ is scrubbing Epstein files with Trump's name in them. Today, there are 1,513 results. Yesterday, there was 1,712 results. So thousands, and maybe some are being taken down, which is kind of crazy. And it's not just Trump. Here's a headline about Trump that pops up because some people are being mentioned in like passing because someone wrote an email about them, but they had nothing to do with it. Trump's is allegations. That's what so many of them are about him. So I don't know that takeaway, but Trump is trying to pretend the same thing, but he's also saying he's going to sue people who have talked about the issue. And here was him saying that. Then we'll get to Trump's former personal attorney, now Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, really trying to put this issue to rest. Just the quickest break from the video to request that you click the subscribe button. As you know, that's an important way to boost the message that we deliver to a larger audience, which is very important. Helps us out, but it's completely free on your end. Just by clicking that subscribe button, you help support our work.
Numerous times, and I don't think they want to see a shutdown either.
Mr. President, are you going to sue Trevor Noah? Last night in a post, you alluded that something could be coming.
Yeah, well, he said that I spent time on Jeffrey Epstein's island. I didn't. I mean, he's a lightweight, this guy. He's a terrible, I think he's terrible. I thought he did a terrible job at the Grammys. I thought the whole Grammys was terrible. I watched part of it. It's not watchable.
So again, maybe it's true that Trump was never at Epstein's island. Whenever there's all this documentation of Epstein just going, hey, don't worry about coming to my island. I'll just come to you. I'll just hang out at Mar-a-Lago. I don't know how much of a defense that is, but everyone picked up on this. Listen to what he says. It's a little slip up because normal people, like when I talk about this, I don't go, the White House is reeling over Jeffrey's island. What do I say? Epstein. I specify which Jeffrey I'm talking about. Trump slipped because of how used to in his past life he was to being on a first name basis with Jeffrey Epstein. And he goes, Jeffrey Epstein's island.
He said that I spent time on Jeffrey Epstein's island. I didn't.
They say I spent time on Jeff's island. I mean, it's like a nickname. J-Dog's, I mean, Epstein's island. Now, that's Trump's attempt, just threatening to sue everyone. We'll talk about in the next segment. Hey, you remember whenever Melania was threatening to sue over people saying that Epstein introduced Melania and Donald? Well, one of the documents says that's exactly what happened. And Michael Wolff responds to that. But here is Todd Blanche, who's the Deputy Attorney General, was Trump's personal attorney. So Trump installs someone in his administration who was personally working for him and then says that's going to be the guy who's in charge of the review and rollout of the Epstein files. That's also the guy, to remind you, who had that long meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell. Then after he got Ghislaine Maxwell to be like, Trump was nothing but a gentleman all the time, which is as credible as her saying Epstein was a gentleman all the time, which she also was trying to pass off, and that she did nothing wrong. So then right after that, she got moved to the cushy prison. That's who we're talking about here. And he says, listen, what we're really talking about in images where little girls are on the laps of these powerful people, sexually graphic images, you're getting confused. These were all just parties, and it's not a crime to party. When in America did it become criminal to have a good party?
Well, as some of the people we saw on camera at the rallies, is there any chance that any of these individuals who partied with Epstein and engaged in relations with minors will be prosecuted? Any chance?
I'll never say no, and we will always investigate any evidence of misconduct. But as you know, it is not a crime to party with Mr. Epstein, and so as horrible as it's not a crime to email with Mr. Epstein. And some of these men may have done horrible things, and if we have evidence that allows us to prosecute them, you better believe we will. But it's also the kind of thing that the American people need to understand, that it isn't a crime to party with Mr. Epstein. It isn't a crime to have lunch.
Didn't look like that's all that was going on some of those photos. I mean, if the photos could speak, some of them look pretty bad.
That's right. And unfortunately, photos can't speak. And so we need witnesses, and we need
evidence. Are there videotapes that you all have?
And that's where the clip cuts off, unfortunately. Goodness. So Laura Ingraham even doesn't seem to be buying it so much. There's none of those people you could look into more thoroughly. Because they keep saying, well, obviously, if we got undeniable evidence of a crime, we would pursue a case. What they don't say is why, when they got in office, they shut down the investigations that were going on. That's what they don't answer for. And of course, it's not a crime. Like, if Epstein was doing a bunch of different events with a lot of different powerful people, you happen to be at an event, and then you go, "What up, dude?" And then he writes an email being like, "Yo, Luke said, 'What up, dude?' to me at this party," and then you're in the files, and there's a photo of you at the party. That by itself doesn't mean that you're an abuser or anything like that. Now, on a court of public opinion front, the people who had real relationships with him, or the people who were writing, "When's the wildest party on the island? Let me come, please," like Elon was, then you should be judged for the fact that we already knew when all those emails were written who this guy was. He was already convicted of crimes against children and then was out of prison. So that already is something to be judged. To Blanche's point, or really more so Laura Ingraham's point, it looks like a heck of a lot more than just partying. And I do have a tough time with some of the videos and photos that we've seen with the redactions, that there isn't enough evidence to at least start investigating more, gathering more evidence, and interviewing more witnesses, or just going off of the witness interviews that you've already had. But we know where his intention is at. He just recently said the review's over, despite the majority of the documents still not being out.
Say we're allowed to release because of a protective order, but this review is over. I mean, we reviewed over 6.
It's over, he says. So that's really what he means. Don't take too much. Don't take any of this too seriously. Yeah, there are a bunch of images, witnesses, emails that would lead you to believe they could build a case, as seemed to be happening before Trump got into office the second time, against other perpetrators. But really, all of that evidence, millions of documents, all it proved was a bunch of people were at the parties, and it's not a crime to party. As I showed you in the last segment, Brian Krasenstein pointed to something that, if his reporting here is correct, is pretty disturbing, that the DOJ might be wiping some of the mentions of Trump. Today, he says there was 1,513 results when you search Trump, and yesterday there were about 200 more files mentioning Trump. Very strange. Very, very strange. You got Epstein in an email reflecting, just giving some of the updates since we last talked about this, reflecting on a dinner with Zuckerberg that looks like it's supposed to say Musk, Thiel, Hoffman, and he says, wild. So that's that. And this, I think, the real reason Trump's popularity is collapsing has more to do with on-the-ground lived experiences of people economically, but this doesn't help. And I do think it's pushing away some of the people who previously were trusting in Trump because of how much this became a litmus test for the corruption of the government. And Trump's just, similar to how he's doing with affordability, just telling you everything's great. He's also just trying to tell us that he's the most popular that he's ever been. He says the highest poll numbers I have ever received. He doesn't cite them. You'll notice this. Every time he says he's more popular than ever, he doesn't cite a poll. He just says, a new poll just came out, more popular than ever. Never cite it. Obviously, people like a strong and powerful country with the best economy ever. But as we can do every single time he makes this claim, he's actually very unpopular, way down here on this bottom dark red line. And his approval is at 41% according to The Economist. It's gotten below 40 according to other polling institutions. So that means that the defenses of him, his record from his defenders, will have to increasingly just be made up stuff like John Kennedy here.
Do you think that the Justice Department needs to just pull this Jerome Powell subpoena to try to get the show on the road and address some of those affordability concerns that are kind of flashing warning lights for the midterms?
Well, look, I think that poll was correct.
Okay.
When moms and dads lie to have them sleep at night and they can't, they're not lying there, as the Democrats think, worrying about whether a man can breastfeed. They're worried about the cost of living. They're tired of having to sell blood plasma to go to the grocery store. They're tired of the increases in their housing costs and their insurance. I mean, I could go on and on. And it needs to be addressed, and I've encouraged the president to address it. And it's not enough to tell the American people not to believe their own lying checkbooks. Mm-hmm. They know about their personal finances. Is the president responsible for the remaining inflation? No, he helped get inflation down from 9% to roughly 3%. But it's still not enough. And every waking hour in Congress, and I've told Senator Thune this, my good friend.
Okay, we get it. What did he say here? I kind of zoned out.
Affordability concerns that are kind of flashing warning lights for the midterms?
Well, look, I think that poll was correct.
Okay.
When moms and dads lie to have them sleep at night and...
Oh, he says they're not worrying about men breastfeeding like the Democrats. Find me unelected... Jaden saying, yeah. Really? Speak for yourself, John. Because I've been laying down many nights thinking about that. No, I mean, find me an elected Democrat who's ever said that that's what the American people are concerned with. Ridiculous. But you hear this lie so much and it's driving me crazy. I know we fact check it, but it still just gets told, and the Fox is like, yeah, sure. But lately, Republicans will just say Trump brought inflation from 9% to 3%. To which Brian Tyler Cohen fact-checked, inflation was not 9%. It was 3% when Trump took office, which means he helped get it down from 3% to 3%. And tariff-sensitive industries have seen price pushes upwards, but they just say that. Like, what do they really think in 1 year inflation went from 9% to 3% under Trump in the last year? Like, but no one was talking about that. There wasn't any numbers coming out about that. They're just giving Trump credit for the thing that Biden did. Now, that would say inflation spiked under Biden, so then is it an accomplishment to get it back down? Well, yeah, whenever the entire world has fallen apart and then you take over during all sorts of supply chain, economic, global issues because of a pandemic that your predecessor was effing up, yeah, it actually is kind of an accomplishment to see the surge that would have happened under any president and then do a better job than a lot of your counterpart nations at bringing that down pretty rapidly. Or stuff like this. Again, just lying.
ICE and Border Patrol are true patriots. They need to be respected. The Democrats need to agree to stop demonizing them. We've heard despicable rhetoric from people on the left comparing ICE to the Nazi Gestapo, Donald Trump's police force. That is egregious language that has led to the increase in violence, threats, and attacks against ICE agents who are brave men and women who put on the uniform to enforce our nation's immigration laws. So the Trump administration is always going to be on the side of law and order, and we want to remove these illegal alien, rapists, murderers, pedophiles, despicable individuals from our country to protect the homeland. And the president has done a phenomenal job at doing that. And that's why murder rates in this country, newly released data show, are at the lowest in recorded history. These things are not coincidental. Under Joe Biden, murders were up, violent crime was up. We had illegal aliens invading our country from all over this world. All of that has ended. So President Trump knows what works. Democrats, if they were smart, would trust him.
So once again, she says a lot of stuff there. I understand you don't like the Nazi comparisons, and that's fine. And I try to stay away as much as possible from Nazi comparisons. But whenever you seem to whenever your president quotes Hitler in his campaign rallies, whenever Stephen Miller seems to quote similar sources, whenever Bavino's doing like a cosplay of a Nazi in his garb, and whenever the tactics of militarized rights violating enforcement, it's not that you're doing what Hitler did, obviously, but people can't help but draw comparisons from a notable time in history, even if they're not saying they're equivalent. Oh gosh. Okay, so that point, and then she's saying they're getting the rapists and the pedo. No, our whole problem is that you're not actually going after those people in large numbers. You're going after a bunch of people who don't have criminal records. The majority of the people actually you're detaining don't have criminal records. And then finally, she says murders and violent crime were up under Biden. It's like the exact same inflation point, and now they're down under Trump. And you don't really know what to say other than that's wrong. We've reviewed the numbers a bazillion times, and so there was a spike in 2020, huge spike. Who was president? Trump. And then that spike had happened and was continuing. Biden takes over. Again, you can blame pandemic conditions to say it wasn't Trump's fault, but then you have to do the same thing for the beginning of Biden. And then, especially the last 2 years, this huge plummet, the last 2 years of Biden's term, in violent crime and murder rates. Pretty historic plummet. And then that historic plummet continued into Trump's first year. Now, you could say somehow starting day one, despite him not being able to do anything on a bunch of problems that he says are still Biden's fault, that he immediately started implementing things that contributed to a historic drop that was kind of already happening during his predecessor, but it's actually because of him.
I think the good parts are the Trump economy, and the bad parts are the Biden economy.
Crime, I don't know, are Biden's fault. And it just doesn't come off as very coherent. There was a trend. And maybe you could even say it accelerated a little bit, but it definitely didn't come out of nowhere. And there definitely wasn't a super high violent crime and homicide rate under Biden. Instead, we saw a pretty strong trend. So if you can't defend him on the facts, you're going to have to end up defending him with lies, I guess, is their model.